Hi, Grandma here, and I'm reading Tirzah, Chapter 19, A New Way. From where she sat in the small circle of students, Tirzah could see the mottled skin on the teacher's hand as it held his teaching stick. She tried to listen to the words so that she could repeat them with the others. It was all so new, so wonderful, learning the words from Yahweh. She could not imagine what life was like before. Now everyone must learn the commandments, even the children. The teacher's stick rapped for attention. "Repeat after me," he said, "everyone together. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name." Tirzah said the words haltingly at first, then louder, along with the other voices raised in unison with the teacher's. "Good, good," the teacher commended them. "Now go along home and remember your lesson." Tirzah walked slowly. It was already hot, the sky above her a brilliant blue, except for the cloud of Yahweh hanging low in the distance right above the new tabernacle. It was always there. When the cloud moved, Moses said they would follow it as before. Tirzah tried to picture how it would be. First, the newly built Ark of Yahweh, beautiful and so holy that only the priests could bear it on special carrying poles. Then the tabernacle with all its parts carried by the Levites. And last, the people would come marching by tribes behind the leaders. It was such a glorious picture in Tirzah's mind that she imagined she could hear the new silver trumpets sounding the call. But it was only Abishur, striding along the path, playing a lively song on his flute. She waited for him to catch up. Taking the flute from his lips, he smiled his old smile with his sun-browned skin. He was handsomer than ever. Tirzah fell into step beside him. "That's a new song," she said. "I like it." "A new song for a new day, Tiz." "A hot one," Tirzah commented. The sun was almost directly above them. "Well, that's not exactly what I meant," Abishur said. "Everything's changed, Tiz. We're a nation now, the people of the covenant. We have the laws of Yahweh for living rightly. It's a whole new way of life, a good one." A stone wedged itself in Tirzah's sandal, and she stopped to pick it out. She hadn't thought of all the things, and she liked the sound of the people of the covenant. "I know," she said. "Today we learn the commandment to honor our father and our mother so that we might enjoy a long life in the promised land." Immediately she was sorry she'd mentioned it to Abishur. "I didn't mean to make you think about your father," she said weakly. "It's okay, Tiz. I'm over all that now." His tone was calm and quiet. "Besides, we learned the same commandment of Yahweh in our group." Abishur and the older boys met separately with one of the elders. They'd come to the dividing of the path. Abishur stood for a minute looking at Tirzah. "Don't ever grow up, Tiz," he said. With a light tap of his flute on the tip of her nose, he left her. His remarks stung her. She was not a child, and just because he was a cousin was no reason for him to treat her like one. Under her breath, Tirzah muttered, "And I suppose you're grown up." It made no sense even as she said it. Striding down the path and playing his flute, Abishur couldn't hear her anyway. She wished she had. Abihail was hardly older than she was. Let him try telling her she's a child. She stormed into the tent just as little Deborah woke from her nap. Her blue eyes were open wide, and she smiled and cooed as she recognized Tirzah. Her tiny arms reached out to be picked up. Tirzah felt all her hostility melt away before her perfect little sister. "You, dear, you precious love," she crooned softly. When Leah entered the tent and saw her two girls together, pride and love swelled within her. Yahweh is good, she thought, putting down her bundle of bitter herbs for the coming Passover. On exactly the first day of the first month of the second year since they had left Egypt, the whole camp celebrated the Passover. This time there was no fear of the dark night outside and no anxious thoughts about the morning. the flight to freedom. Joy filled the tent as the solemn ceremony was performed. Tirzah did not bother to hide her tears when Orrin said the prepared words in answer to their father's question, "Do you know the meaning of this night?" Proudly, Tirzah held the newest member of the family on her lap and whispered, "See, this is your family. Aren't you glad?" After the Passover days ended, there were more lessons. Abihail rarely waited for Tirzah these days. From the corner of her eye, Tirzah saw her red gold head bent toward a group of older girls, all of whom were of marriageable age and talked of nothing else. "Hi, waiting for someone?" Ephon, cheerful as usual, caught up with Tirzah. "No, just thinking," Tirzah replied. Now that she had the chance, there was something she wanted to ask Ephon. "Mind if I walk with you?" Ephon's round face looked pleased. "I need the company," she said. For a while they walked in silence. Tirzah was in no hurry, and Ephon didn't seem to be either. "Ephon, I did want to ask you something," Tirzah said. "How did you do that morning? I mean, you were the only one who had those long commandments down perfectly." Her own attempt to recite them had been painfully poor. Shyly, Ephon glanced at Tirzah. "If you really want to know," she said, "it was easy. I made it all into a little song last night so I could remember it." Tirzah grinned. The idea was a good one. "Ephon, do you think I could learn that way too?" "Well, why don't you try?" Ephon offered, her eyes alight with pleasure. They walked as far as they could together, Ephon singing the lines and Tirzah repeating them. Have any of you memorized anything by singing it? It really does make it a lot easier. At the parting of the path, Tirzah reluctantly went on alone. She liked Ephon. How was it she hadn't known that before? The fact that the girl worked like a son for her father and seemed shy didn't mean anything. She was strong. That was something. And she was keen, and her voice was rich and sweet. As she passed the doorway of Jerioth's tent, Mary, a cheerful smile on her face, waved to her. The fever had left her weak. Tirzah knew that she still mourned for Hannah, though she never complained. Some people still slighted Mary because she was Egyptian. Tirzah's chin went up resolutely. No one would say a word against Mary while she was around. She waved back heartily. Nahalath and Macha had come to see the baby. Nahalath picked Deborah up and held her in her arms. Macha kneeled by them, cooing and clucking like a mother bird. Tirzah was the envy of both girls, since the youngest in their household was 11 years old. When Deborah squeezed her eyes shut and began to wail loudly, her mother took her from Nahalath's arm with a sigh. "Time to nurse again. One of these days you will have your own babe to care for," she said, looking directly at Nahalath. "Or do the rumors I hear count for nothing?" Nahalath blushed. "What can I say, Aunt Leah? You know how people talk." Nahalath was the oldest girl already of marriageable age. The matchmakers lost no time trying to find suitors as soon as the girl was ready, and Nahalath was no exception. Tirzah grinned, thinking of the work the aunts would make of it, and all the while Nahalath had eyes for only one, Haran, son of Peleg. But so far Haran the hunter seemed to care for nothing but his bow, sharpening his arrows and hunting. How in the world would he ever marry someone like Nahalath, who was so squeamish? Tirzah had seen her retch at the sight of a dead coney covered with flies. The sudden sound of the trumpet silenced them all. It lasted for several minutes, clear, high notes filling the air and then dying away to stillness. Tirzah looked at her mother, who nodded. By the way, I wanted to talk about the conies. The conies, I looked up on my computer, are small animals that look a little bit like guinea pigs. They look a little bit bigger than guinea pigs. But the part that really amazed me is they are the closest relative to the elephant. So this small little animal that lives in the rocks in the desert is the closest relative to the elephant. And one article I read said that it has tiny little tusks that look like teeth, but they are a little bit longer, and they are just very miniature tusks like an elephant has. Anyway, let's finish this story. Yes, it's the call to prepare for the march. We are moving again, she said. Come, there is much to do. Nahalath and Macha left hastily, and Tirzah followed her mother inside. She went first to the rock Ben had given her, wrapped it closely inside her best clothes, and began packing. So, Nahalath would escape the ants for a while longer. A thought entered her mind and found its way to her lips. Mother, when Ram is ready to marry, do you think Mary will be the one? Her mother's back stiffened. Her voice was unsteady. What gave you such an idea? Before Tirzah could answer, she went on. The girl is a good enough girl, but she has no family and no background. She is also a full-blooded Egyptian. But she loves Yahweh, Tirzah protested, and now that Jerioth has taken her to live with him, she really isn't alone anymore. Her mother turned to face her with flashing eyes. I don't know what puts such things in your head. I don't want to hear another word about it. When the time comes, Ram's wife will be chosen. Tirzah was quick to see the shadow of pain, or was it something else that passed over her mother's face? It isn't fair, she thought. What if I'd been marrying? It was me who Ram loved. She knew how her brother looked at Mary, how Mary brightened whenever he was near. Tirzah stopped packing as the thought struck her. She was matchmaking. Was that to be her destiny? Tirzah, the matchmaker? Well, the next one is hard lessons. And I don't know if that means from the teacher, like she is still having difficulty learning some of the new commandments, or if she's learning a lesson about matchmaking. Well, we'll see the next time. Bye-bye.